Well done everybody, you've got through paper 1. Now it's time to start thinking about paper 2. So let's have the final sesh for paper 2. We'll start firstly with the likely paper structure. So based on historic papers, probably 3 business case studies or 3 sections, and within each of those sections, those 3 sections, it will probably go as follows. So we'll start with a case study. But key thing here, case study means text, words of course, and numeracy. So there's going to be data in those case studies. Please use them. You're likely to have a cheeky definition question to start with, and then it will move into calculation question or questions after that. Then probably an explain question, explain something for 4 marks, explain how, explain why, or analyse perhaps for 6 marks. And that would just be one analysis strand. And then we'll have a 9 marker and a 16 marker to finish with. So that's likely the paper structure that you'll get, and of course you'll get that 3 times. So the importance of the case study is what I want to talk about next. So you will have a case study, of course use it, and your analysis, your theory chains, well, you need to contextualise them. They need to be in context, and that's absolutely the key for this paper because it's case studies galore. Now, context is more than just text, as I referred to earlier on. So please use data from the tables, use the graphs there to support and justify your answers, and justification, of course, within those 16 markers. You can even manipulate data for comparison. For example, you could quickly do a percentage change. Remember percentage change, you're thinking new number minus old number divided by old number times by 100. New, N-O-O. Definitions and data questions. So each of the sections will start with these types of questions. So it's defined for 2 marks. You need to be precise here, but succinct. 2 strong sentences. Data, well, you'll expect several of these data questions throughout, essentially calculation questions. So of course know the formulas, and you know I've put the formulas there within BizCon Sesh under AQA business formulas, so make sure you know those. And then on top of that, we need to utilise those numerical models. Perhaps network analysis could feature, or decision trees, been quiet in recent years, PED, YED, they're the classic models that are numeracy based. And of course, there's probably 1 mark here for getting the right units. So put the right units on your answer. Don't lose that mark. It could be the difference. Units, remember them. Extra tips here to just make you aware of. So be aware of this. So be mindful that some answers from numerical questions, so earlier within a case study, you work out an answer to a calculation question. But the answer from that, and obviously this is on the assumption you've got it right, well, you could use it later on to support analysis or support conclusions. Perhaps in that 16 marker to help you justify the way you're going, you might be able to use numeracy questions from before and the answers that came from them. So watch out for that. It's common for at least 1 to be planted along the paper, so be ready. Be aware. The next thing you'll likely see is these explain for 4 marks or analyse for 6 mark questions. So we're thinking analyse 1, usually 1 in bold, so don't talk about 2. Explain 1 benefit or 1 drawback of a concept to do with that case study. It might be explain why, explain how. And if it's a 6 marker, then of course it's just analyse why. And then the difference between those questions really is explain is a point and then 3 more chains in context. And analyse is your point and then 5 chains in context. So that's all the differences there. So that's your explain and analyse questions. They're likely to be followed by a 9 marker. 9 markers, usually 2 chunky paragraphs in context. Unless it does stipulate 1, then go for the 2 paragraph approach. It's safer, and it's likely to allow you to be more detailed in your approach. And if it suggests you use an appendix or a table, please do so. It's there to help you. You'd be surprised how many students missed that in previous years. Despite being in bold, use this table, use this figure, you forget to use it. So make sure you do that, and that will access you into the top levels. It will give you the key to those top levels. Next thing is ensure you read the whole question. And what I really mean here is the end of the question. Sometimes there's something in the end of the question that just turns the narrative of the question. So look for the second half of the question, see if there's a specific concept, such as cash flow, or costs, or revenue, or it could be market share, or brand loyalty, customer service. And just watch out for that, because it might just change ever so slightly the way you approach the question. So read the entire question, not just the first half of the question, where the concept's likely to be. 16 markers, well, you're likely to get 3 16 markers here, and there'll be the end of each section, probably laid out as follows. So something like, to what extent is XYZ, whatever the concept is, a good idea? So technique is very important. FAC, for, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, against, paragraph 3, conclusions. So use the context, of course, throughout, and just to remind you, that's both words and numbers. So use the text from the case study, but the one that's mostly forgotten is the numbers, so make sure you're on top of that data or those charts or those tables or whatever they give you there to support your conclusions and your analysis through quantitative information. 16 markers, the next thing to think about is the question often goes, to what extent is XYZ, the concept, a good idea for all businesses? Now, all businesses is different to the business in the case study. So, of course, you want to utilise what you get from that case study, but then you might want to introduce real-world examples on these questions. And even better is if you can think of a business scenario that is in juxtaposition to the narrative of the business in the case study. So if you can use it to evaluate off of based on your own wider reading, well, that's going to be brilliant for you to access top levels. Also within the 16 markers is look for a narrative changer in those words. Perhaps towards the end of the question it might say it will change profit or it will change costs now. That's different to in the future. So if it said in the future, be aware you've got a kind of a long-term thing going on as opposed to now means a short-term thing. So just watch out for the wording of the question. It's always there really to discriminate between the top-level answers and the level below that. And then the last thing to think about is summary. So exam technique is really critical for paper 2. So all about exam technique here, all about those case studies. So another important thing to just suggest is knowing when you need to evaluate and when you don't. So you need to, of course, evaluate in those 16 markers. You do not need to evaluate in those 9 markers. So don't waste your time there. There's just a lack of efficiency there. So your evaluation is in the 16 markers and the rest of the paper is just disciplined contextual analysis. Planning is key for longer questions, of course, the 16 markers, so make sure you're being thoughtful, you're making plans before you engage, and thoughtful points likely means points that you can make lots of contextual strands off of, rather than being excessive and making a point and then superficially linking it to the case study, and then making the next point and superficially linking it to the case study, and just making loads of little points. Quality over quantity. Make a good big point with lots of development strands. That will score better. Quality over quantity. Be thoughtful. The next thing is just be focused on the whole question to ensure you open up those top levels, so those level 4s in the 16 markers, to force yourself to develop those points, as I said before. I wish you all the best with paper 2. I'll be back for more with paper 3. And one last thing to think about as you go into this paper and you're trying to get those development strands is at the end of every sentence, just think why. And sometimes just by saying why to yourself, you'll be able to connect on to that next sentence to create those chains of analysis. Best of luck. See you at the next sesh.